back to the channel. This is Masked Gaming, and today I bring you the solo Templar build designed for Vet Maelstrom and even Vet Fatran Hollows, which is the new solo trial in the new markarth DLC. Now, as you can see from my stats, we have an amazing 31,000 maximum stamina, 4.3k weapon damage and 55% weapon critical with half decent resistances, along with 1,100 stamina recovery. Now, full disclaimer, I am running full gold gear, so the stats are inflated by the full gold gear. However, these stats do not change much in the difference between gold and purple, so if you do have the capability to run purple, I would highly advise it. The difference is about 200 weapon damage for the jewelry, and you'll probably hit about 3.9k weapon damage with about maybe 49% weapon crit, so it's not that much of a difference and it still works amazing. We've got 64 points into stamina, we are an orc, and we're running the Shadow Mundus Stone as we're running full divines. Now, if we go into the gear, I'm very excited to show you guys this build. I've been working on it for a while. Just before we actually cover the gear, I just want to say, link in the description for my official Discord if you want to just drop in, say hi, and if you need any help with anything on Xbox or build advice, I will help you out and take the time just to reply to you in DMs or even in the server itself. We do have a Discord bot, and we will be organising events once the Discord gets even bigger, so it's going to be a nice community thing for us to do, giveaways and things like that when the channel evolves. Now, let's go right into it. We're running Witch Knight. Now, if you do remember on my previous video, I ran this on my snipe stacker. I ran this because it increased your weapon damage for your 2-piece, weapon damage for your 3-piece, weapon damage for your 4-piece, and increases your weapon damage against poisoned enemies by 369. Now, this ties in with our bow, which I'll show you in a second. I'm running 2 daggers of this, one in Precise and one in Nirnhound, with 2 poison damage glyphs. On our back bar, we're running the Master's Perfected Bow with a weapon damage enchantment and infused. For those of you who don't know, the Master's Bow adds 103 weapon damage on the Perfected variant, which you can get from Veteran Dragonstar Arena as opposed to normal Dragonstar Arena, which will not give you the 103 weapon damage bonus. But the other second piece bonus here is constant between the normal and veteran variants of this weapon. It increases your weapon damage by 330 against targets affected by your poison arrow. Next up, we're running a heavy Balorg's Visage. We run this because of the extra resistances and because of the Undaunted bonus. And we're running this in Divines with maximum stamina. And as you can see, we're just doing this to get the extra weapon and spell damage, as we are running a Mythic with this build. We're running the chest piece, the Jack of the Vicious Ophidian. What this does is it adds 833 weapon critical. On the 3-piece, gives you minus Slayer, increasing your damage done to dungeon, trial and arena monsters by 5%. On the 4-piece, adds 833 weapon critical. And on the 5-piece, adds 129 weapon damage, reduces the cost of your stamina abilities by 8%, and when an enemy you have killed dies, well, they would die if you killed them naturally, you restore 2.5k stamina and gain major expedition for 8 seconds, increasing your movement speed by 30%. This can occur every 1 second, so try not to kill things too fast. We're running the Shoulders of the Vicious Ophidian, Divines, maximum stamina. The Belt of the Vicious Ophidian, Divines, maximum stamina. Braces of the Vicious Ophidian, Divines, maximum stamina. Witch Knight Guards in medium, Divines, maximum stamina. And we're running the Boots of the Vicious Ophidian, Divines, maximum stamina. On our jewellery, we are running Infused Necklace with a weapon damage enchant of the Witch Knight. And next up, we are running the Ring of the Pale Order. Now, I actually used this in my previous Stam Nightblade solo build, but since then, things have changed. You restore 18% of the damage you deal as maximum health, up to a maximum of 2.7k per attack. Now, the reason we are a Templar is because our main spammable does a lot of attacks very fast, meaning we can heal up to 2.7k per jab, turning our stamina variant of jabs into the Magicka variant that everyone likes on the Magplar, which heals you for the damage done. So this is very nice. We've put this in Infused with weapon damage enchant on it. And on the final one, we've run Robust with a weapon damage enchant on a Witch Knight ring. That way we can make up the 5-piece of our Witch Knight's Defiance set, and we can maintain some of our maximum stamina by running Robust, as more weapon damage would be unnecessary compared to the loss of stamina. You can run this infused if you wish, however I think a lot of people will find this more cost efficient, as you will not need to spend another 50 transmute crystals. Side note as well, in the Markarth DLC, transmute crystals are being changed. The sources of all transmute crystals are being increased because the new cap for ESO Plus players is actually 1,000 transmute crystals due to the new collection book system. I covered this in my Markarth patch notes video, which I will link in the description as well. Let's try and get those views up. It's one of my least popular videos, surprisingly. However, it's very informative, so for those of you who want to know what's happening with Markarth, please go check that out. I covered all of the mechanics, and I covered the new sets and everything, and gave you my live reactions to them all. Now, let's move on to the skills. Now, if we go all the way to the top here, or all the way at the bottom, we've got Biting Jabs. Now what Biting Jabs does is it basically stabs your enemy for a lot of damage in a large area. Now this ability was meant to get nerfed, but it didn't. If anything, it's stronger than ever. You deal a lot more damage and you hit all the other enemies for about half the amount. Plus it reduces the movement speed of the closest enemy by 40%. As well as activating this ability, it gives you Major Savagery, increasing your critical rating by 2,629, which, if I'm not mistaken, is about 10% crit. This is actually our main spammable, and when you hit this ability loads, as you can see I'm going to demonstrate now, that hits for about 5 times. That is an upwards of about 2.4k healing, depending on how much damage you're hitting for. So you spam this ability as your main spammable, and you can heal for a lot. And I honestly do love using this ability. Next up we have our burst ability, the Power of the Light. What you do is you cast this on an enemy, and what it does is it takes all of the damage you've done to them and amplifies it, and then bursts it out onto the enemy again. So you're hitting about 18k based on the amount of damage you've done. Plus, this can actually crit, so this 18k can actually turn into upwards of 30,000 damage after 6 seconds, as well as reducing the enemy's physical and spell resistance by 2.9k. Now next up we have our Execute. You could run the Trap for Fighters Guild instead of this ability, however I prefer to have an Execute in arena missions. So what this does is does 100% more damage to enemies with less than 50% health, meaning the lower the health, the more damage this ability will do. You should only cast this at 25, I recommend, because the difference in DPS between casting this, Biting Jabs, and Whirling Blades at 50% is very minimal, so I'd advise using Biting Jabs to maintain your rotation until you hit 25% health on the boss. Now next up we're running Camouflaged Hunter. Now Camouflaged Hunter, while slotted, gives you Major Savagery, increasing your critical rating. I know that the Biting Jabs and this two don't stack, however we're running this because Fighters Guild gives you bonus weapon damage for having one of their abilities slotted, as well as the ability to grant Minor Berserk for 5 seconds when you deal critical damage on an enemy's flank, meaning their sides or behind, increasing your damage done by 5%, so this is really good if you can get behind enemies. This could also work for 4-man content. It eliminates the need for a healer if you're doing enough damage, mixed with the Ring of the Pale Order. Meaning if you're running this, you will have a tank that will pull the enemies away from you for you to hit them from behind. Next up we're running our main Stun. I prefer to use this because it boosts our weapon damage, as well as having it activated reduces your damage taken by 5% and increases your stamina recovery. What this does is you slam a rune on the floor, it fears everybody in the area, as well as making you regen stamina a lot faster. Plus, as a Fighter's Guild ability, it gives you bonus weapon damage for having it slotted. Next up we're running a Flawless Dawnbreaker for our ultimate. We've got a lot of damage, it's got a nice dot as well, plus after activating your weapon damage is increased by 300 for 20 seconds. Now this is a very nice ultimate to have, it hits very hard, it's one of the hardest hitting ultimates for stamina, so it's a good thing to use, I mean apart from the Necromancer quote unquote fatty as they call it. Now next up on our back bar, our bow bar, we're running Empowering Sweep as the ultimate. This is just a flex spot, you can use whatever ultimate you wish, you're not really going to be using it. We've got Ritual of Retribution, which damages the enemies as well as healing you, and allies can use the Purify, which cleanses them from all harmful effects and heals them. So this is a very nice team ability as well as a solo one to deal a little bit more damage. Plus the damage increases by 5% per tick while it's in there, increasing to about an extra 30% damage. Yes, it is magic damage, however, our magic damage is quite high due to the fact that we are running a very high base weapon damage, because your weapons can actually affect your spell damage rating. A 1800 damage two-hander will add 1800 spell damage to the spell damage section. So the higher your base actual weapon damage, the higher your spell damage. I know it's very complex, however, it's just how you look at it, you'll understand it eventually. Next up we've got Restoring Focus. Now this ability costs next to nothing. It is our main resistance booster, and it gives us 240 stamina every second. Plus, standing within the rune actually gives you more physical and spell resistance by 50% just for standing actually in it. Now next up, we don't actually need to use Vigor, but I put it on there just in case the ring fails me. Vigor is a very nice, very strong heal, but seeing as we're running the ring, you won't actually need to cast this as much as you think you would. Next up we've got Repentance. Now Repentance is very nice. If you want to just get your resources back, switch to your back bar. You'll have Minor Fortitude, Minor Endurance and Minor Intellect, which increases your health, stamina and mag recovery by 20% just for having it slotted. As well as the fact that if you've got any dead bodies near you, you cast this and it gives you 3k health and 3k stamina per corpse nearby. This ability is brilliant for resource recovery if you're facing a lot of enemies. This is why you must run it for a solo content build, as there's loads of enemies around you that you've just killed, so nobody else will be stealing those Repentance casts, so you can get all of the health and stam. And finally we are running Venom Arrow. Now Venom Arrow is the main ability for this build. You need to start off your fight with Venom Arrow. Not only does it act as an interrupt to those enemies who are trying to cast one-tap abilities on you, it also acts as a dot, and it casts a poison damage effect on them. Now if you remember, we're running a set called Witch Knight's Defiance, which increases your damage done to poisoned enemies by 300 weapon damage. This arrow triggers that Witch Knight's Defiance, as well as the Master's Bow. So just for casting this ability, you are getting an extra 700 weapon damage against that target, just for casting this for 10 seconds. You can switch back to your front bar and do a lot of damage, and in those 10 seconds that enemy will die. You will hit a lot harder than you would expect to with Hunding's Rage and Vicious Ophidian, which is why I wanted to mix it up, because that is what everybody runs. Plus, mixed with the ring, you eliminate the need to cast Rigor, so you're saving more resources just by doing damage. The more damage you do, the more you stay alive. Now let's move on to the champion points. In the tower, we're running 30 points into Warlord to reduce our cost of break free, because it just means that we're able to move around a little bit without being stunned, and if we do get stunned, we can break free a lot easier. Next up, we're running 75 into Mooncarth, obviously, because we're running stamina and we do want stam recovery. We're running 75 into Tenacity, because on the odd chance you do a heavy attack, you kind of want to get more resources for your work. And we've got 30 points into Healthy. You can use these 30 points for anything, I just threw them in there because they weren't needed, and health recovery is always nice, something you can't say no to. And of course we've got 60 points into Tumbling, because roll dodge is very important when you do solo content, and solo content does require a lot of roll dodge because there is a lot of AoE attacks that you need to get out of the way of. So having Tumbling will mean that it's not as harsh on your resource bar. We've got no points in the Apprentice. We've got 60 points into Master at Arms on the Atronach tree though, because all of our damage we do is actually direct damage, except for the Poison Arrow, but that is a dot that can afford to be a little bit neglected. For min-maxing, of course, you would want to put a lot more points into Thaumaturge, however, we don't really need to focus on it. So we're running 50 points into Thaumaturge as opposed to the usual 75. We're running 60 points into Precise Strikes to increase our critical damage and critical healing with stamina abilities. Fun fact, this actually affects your ring, so the damage you're doing with your stamina abilities affects the healing of your mythic ring. However, that's what I've been told. I haven't done the actual maths towards it, so please take that information with a pinch of salt. Next up, we're running 40 points into piercing because you never know what resistances the enemies may have. I know for a fact that in Veteran Maelstrom, enemies get more resistant to your attacks. They don't get more health, they get more resistance. So you want to be able to get through as many of those resistances as possible, making sure that you are always outputting the maximum damage possible. And next up, we have 60 points into Mighty because all of our damage we are doing is actually physical, poison and disease damage. So we really do want to spec into that quite a bit. Next up, we're running 60 points into Ironclad, and a bit unconventional, we're running 40 points into Medium Armor Focus and 40 into Spell Shield, because this build is actually very squishy without these points in. We need as many resistances as possible. Plus, the champion points I'm about to show you, I believe, can afford to be neglected in some places. For example, not many ads actually run damage over time effects, so you can afford to only put 30 in this, just to get that extra little bit, just in case they do it, but there's not really much point into speccing too much into it. I see so many builds waste champion points because they've put 60 into Hardy, 60 into Elemental Defender and 60 into Thick Skinned. You don't need that many, you can use those points for something else. Which is why I've put 50 into Hardy, 50 into Elemental Defender and 30 into Thick Skinned. And that is it, guys. That is the build in its entirety. Now, I've tried to explain to the best of my ability what the build does, but if you do have any questions, please be sure to drop a comment in the comment section and I will get back to you as soon as possible. I'm always trying to keep in contact with my community. I love how fast this channel is going, so I'm so thankful for all the support you guys have given me. There is a Discord link in the beginning, as I mentioned, in the description, as I mentioned in the beginning of the video. I'll help out as much as I can and I'll give you that personal input to your builds if you do so require. That's why I like my own niche in this YouTube development, because not a lot of YouTubers actually interact with their community. They pump out videos and they get their money. I want to help people as much as I can, which is why I try to go off meta so people can actually enjoy this game. Once again, if you did like the video, please drop a comment and drop a like and subscribe. And I will catch you guys next Tuesday in the next video. I'll be doing another PvP build, and I'm sure you will all love it. As always, I'll see you in the next one. See you guys.